Good evening, Sonder family. Welcome to our Sunday evening weekly setup. My name is Bailey Grady, and I will be your facilitator this evening. If this is your first time joining us for a weekly setup, welcome. What this is going to look like is we're going to be going through pages 32 and 33 in the journal, going through each section and giving you some ideas and inspiration of how you might like to set up these pages. And then we are going to give you some nice music to kind of reflect and then hopefully get your pages set up. We are also going to be sharing tips and tricks with each other in the chat. And in order to do that, you're going to want to make sure that that little blue box is set to everyone. If it is set to hosts and panelists, not everyone will be able to see what you have to say. And one of the best things about coming to a Sonder Social is the ability to connect with our broader community. So make sure that you flip that box over to everyone so that you can share with the group. And for my regular social attendees, welcome back. It's always nice to see super familiar names in the chat. Um, and as always, of course, as we're going through, make sure that you snap any photos that you like, either of what we have up on the screen or as you're working through your journals. We would love to see photos of those in Sonder Club. You can also post them on the socials and tag Silk and Sonder on Instagram, TikTok, all the things, and then we can see it there. So let's go ahead and take a look at our community guidelines here. So we always start off all of our events with these just to kind of make sure we're all on the same page. As always, be kind and courteous to yourself and to others. No promotions or spam, please. Be sure we're respecting everyone's privacy here. In the socials, we can get a little vulnerable and a little deep, and so it's very important that people's privacy is respected when we're sharing and being open, which also means we need a safe space. So no hate speech or bullying, please. And then if you will, limit repetitive product and accessory questions. We don't mind a little bit of talk around like stickers, pins, that sort of thing. But this is always like the fastest hour ever. So we want to make sure that we're staying on the topic at hand as much as possible because we do have a limited amount of time with one another. And then there are some questions that we may not have the answers to, like if your journal hasn't come yet, we don't have access to tracking info or your subscription or anything like that. So if you have a question like that, we will direct you over to hello@silkandsonder.com. Speaking of we, Malika is here with me tonight. So she's going to hop on and wave hello. There she is. So she's going to be answering questions in the chat. And I'll pop in there as I'm able to as well. But she's going to be hanging out with us and helping to answer some of those questions and keep everything moving and keep the mood where it needs to be, hopefully. And speaking of mood, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you are responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. So what that means is sometimes we can get into some deep topics here in Sonder Club, and sometimes those topics and things may touch on elements that you're like, ooh, that's feeling a little tense in my body, or I'm feeling apprehensive about this prompt. I'm not sure if I'm ready to engage with this. If that starts to happen to you, we want you to just set it aside, take a breath, take a break, enjoy the music, hang out in the chat, color on your coloring page for a minute. And then once we move on to the next thing, check back in with yourself, see if you're ready to engage there. We want you to take this time for you, whatever that may mean. So if you want to focus just on the journal and ignore the chat altogether, that's totally fine. If you've already done your setup and you're here to just hang out with the community, that is fine as well. Both, neither, a little bit of in between. Whatever you need this hour to be, that's what we want it to be for you. So our agenda today is we're going to be doing our trust mind map. This is an activity we do at our weekly socials where we have a different prompt that kind of goes with our theme of the month. And then we're going to be doing our rosebud thorn reflection exercise. If you are in your journal, that's going to be on page 30 for last week. We'll reflect on last week before we get set up for the next week ahead on pages 32 and 33. So, trust. Welcome to May, everybody. We are not quite a full weekend, but just about. We're just about there, right? 5 days in. This is what I like to call a big theme because trust is a huge, huge topic. And it's something that I have a personal connection with. If you were in the journaling social earlier in the week, you've already heard a little bit of this. I'm going to tell it again. So for me, not that long ago, it was I guess it was probably 4 years ago or so now, but it doesn't feel like it was that long ago to me. Some trust is something I was really struggling with. I was talking about it in therapy. It was coming up in a lot of areas of my life. I had had what I called trust issues for a very long time, as long as I could remember. And when I started talking to my therapist about it, she was like, "Well, where do you think this came from? And where do you think it's started? And can you remember a time where you didn't have this?" Right? Um, and the answer was no. Like I couldn't remember. And so I wasn't sure where it all started or where it stemmed from. And she was like, "Okay, well, one thing I can tell you for sure is trust is something that has to start with you. So when you're thinking about trust, do you fully trust yourself? Does your body trust you? Right? What's your relationship with yourself like with trust?" And I am somebody that once I know that there is a problem or something I'm struggling with, the first thing I want to do is try to figure out what's happening and why and try to fix it. Sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's a bad thing because also then when I find the answer, I expect to be able to solve it right away, and that's not always realistic. But what I ended up finding with trust is I ended up finding a podcast episode where Brene Brown gives a talk about the 7 elements of trust. And she kind of breaks it down into this acronym called BRAVING. And this really, really helped me with trust a lot because instead of just looking at this small little 5-letter word that felt enormous, I was able to really like break down what is trust? What are the elements of trust? What am I struggling with? What am I struggling with myself? Where is this coming up with other people? Right? Why is this happening? And so that BRAVING acronym stands for B, boundaries. So you respect boundaries. And when you're not sure what they are, you ask. You also hold boundaries. So if you set a boundary with somebody and then they cross the line, you circle back and say, "Hey, nope, this is a boundary I've set for myself," right? And you're kind of crossing that, and I'm going to stop you right there because that's building trust with yourself. R is for reliability. You do what you say you will do. A is for accountability. You own your mistakes and apologize. And that includes to yourself. And that was something that I was definitely struggling with trust when I started talking about this with my therapist was I would like set out to do things to better my self-care and take care of myself more. And I kind of knew what I needed to do, but then I wouldn't do the things I said I was going to do. And then instead of actually holding myself accountable and saying, "Hey, we said we were going to do this 3 times this week and we didn't do it at all. It's okay. I still love you, but this is what happened." I was like, "Oh, well, that's not really my fault. Like this happened, and I'll start again next week," right? I wasn't holding myself accountable. And that's something that the Silk and Sonder Journal really helped me with because with all of the trackers and everything, it was right there on the page, right? I couldn't deny it. Like, I didn't drink my water this week. I didn't get my rest this week. It's right there in front of me. And it started to feel less icky the more I did it, right? It didn't feel like I was being scolded. It didn't feel like shame because I also got to build that trust with myself of like, "Hey, still love you. I know you're trying hard, but the reality is we didn't hit the goal, right? So let's think about how we can do better next week. How can we remove some of these obstacles and things?" The vault, you never share experiences that aren't yours to share. Integrity, you practice your values rather than simply professing them. Non-judgment, we can ask for what we need and talk about how we feel without judgment. This is something else I struggled a lot with. I just was always afraid that if I vocalized what I needed in situations that it was going to cause somebody else to not have a good time or not like me, or I was going to ruin their day. There was definitely like a people pleasing element going on there, and I was sacrificing what I needed for the potential happiness of others, even when I was in situations where they probably would not have cared and in fact would have wanted me to take care of myself. I still had that kind of like people pleasing kind of thing getting in my way. And then finally, generosity. And this one is hard for a lot of us. Extend generous interpretations to the words and actions of others. So, what this means is that when somebody violates one of those other 6 elements of that category, you're going to assume that they had the best intentions. So, you're going to assume that they didn't do it on purpose and that they just made a mistake and that they're human. Or if they did do it on purpose, they didn't mean for it to hurt you the way that it did, right? And I love this quote from Maya Angelou where she says, "I don't trust people who don't love themselves and tell me I love you." There is an African saying, which is, "Be careful when a naked person offers you a shirt." And honestly, this works with trust as well. If you don't have trust with yourself, if you don't have that kind of relationship with yourself, it's hard to build it with others. And for me in particular, what was starting to happen with this sort of imbalance of trust in some of these areas of myself is it was manifesting as anxiety because my body was like, hey, I don't trust you to take care of me. When I need to slow down and I need to take a break, you're not doing it. You just keep putting more on our plate and saying yes when you should say no. And yeah, that's fine. We can go to the place, even though I'm way too tired. And yeah, that's fine. I'll take care of that for you, even though I don't have the time or the bandwidth, right? And so what my body started doing was pressing every button it had available, right? It was like, you're tired. That didn't work. Okay, your stomach's upset. That didn't work. Okay, let's press all the buttons and make you have a panic attack because I just need you to stop. I need you to stop and I need you to take care of me, and I can't trust you to do that, right? So that's what was going on for me and how all of this kind of worked for me. That does not mean that this is the only way that trust can sort of relate into your life. But I wanted to kind of share this with you all and give you those examples in case it does click for you in some way. And then something else to remember about trust is that each time one of these areas is violated, the opposite of trust is betrayal. And betrayal is another really big word. So trust is a big thing because not only is it complicated and it's hard to build and it's hard to keep, but when somebody violates that trust, it's really hard to come back from that. And that's going to take us right into our mind map activity today. So this month, we're going to embrace the opportunity for trust to unlock greater insights about ourselves. We will delve into the complexities of trust, exploring its role in your relationships, personal growth, and overall well-being. And we're going to do this over 4 weekends this month. So this week, we're asking you to think about the times that you trust to forgive. So we're asking about trust and related to forgiveness and what that looks like for you. Is there a specific time where you trusted someone and decided to forgive them? Do you want to talk about it from like a broader perspective of the relationship between trust and forgiveness for yourself, right? So I kind of went with that broader perspective. So for me, what I ended up writing is I said, sometimes people make mistakes and there's nothing else they can do other than apologize and ask for you to trust them. And then you just have to think about whether you're willing to do that, to what level and for how long. And all the answers to those questions depends on the existing level of trust and the level of betrayal. Because sometimes people do things that we can't move forward and trust with. I used to cut people out over small things because I had bad relationship with trust in general, but I have worked hard to improve. And now I weigh things more thoughtfully and with more grace. Trust starts in me. So, as I said with what I wrote there, one little betrayal, and I was just like, nope, can't trust this person. That's it. I'm done. Bye. See you later. When in actuality, like nobody is perfect, right? And everybody makes mistakes. And I know I have hurt people before without intending to hurt them, right? Like we're all human and it happens. And sometimes all you can do is just tell people that you're sorry and say, I'm so sorry I made you feel that way. I did not intend to do that. What can we do to move forward? Like all I can do is apologize and tell you in the future I will do X, Y, and Z. But at the end of the day, they have to choose whether or not they're going to trust you to do that, right? And there's a couple quotes there up on the screen, but there's one in particular that I'm sure a lot of us have heard before. It says, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me." I disagree with that. I disagree with it completely. I think it should be, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice." That's betrayal. Because I don't think that you should shame yourself for anything when it comes to trust. If someone apologizes to you, if they make a mistake and they say that they're going to do better or they're going to change or whatever, and you choose to trust them, that's you leaning into that generosity, right? That's you saying, I want to build on this trust with this person. And so I'm going to assume that they had good intent and I'm going to assume that they're going to do better. If that person doesn't do the things that they say that they're going to do, that's on them. That's on them. And that's betrayal. And then that goes back to what we talked about before, right? Where you kind of have to decide how big is the betrayal Is it just this one thing? Are those other 6 elements in alignment and it's just this, or is this a pattern? What do I wanna do with this relationship, right? So, it's a lot to think about. I'm gonna put the prompt back on the screen here, and then I'll hop back and forth between these slides. I'm gonna put on some music so you can think about this prompt for yourself, and then we'll move into our rosebud thorn. deep collective breath here, right? Trust is a big theme. This was a big prompt. If you were able to engage with this and answer it in any way, I am really proud of you, because there is no way to fully answer this prompt without getting vulnerable in some way. If you're still not sure how to answer it and you're still working on it, that is okay. You can come back to it later, or maybe later in the month, right? You don't have to answer this right now, because this is a big question and it brings up a lot of things. But I appreciate all of you so much for sharing in the chat. There are so many like beautiful stories and just real stories and things that I think we can all relate to. And that is something that I think makes this community just absolutely amazing. So thank you all so much for sharing. We are now going to move on into the beginnings of our weekly setup, which starts with Rosebud Thorn. So before we move into the week ahead, we're going to reflect back on the week prior and kind of think about our rose, our bud, and our thorn. So the rose is a highlight, something that went well, maybe something that made you smile. Or if you've had a tough week, maybe your rose is that like that week is over. A bud is an emerging opportunity, something on the horizon, something coming up. It could be something you're excited about. It could be something you're nervous about. It also could just be our new week ahead. And then a thorn is a challenge, something you're struggling with, something that maybe made the week not so easy. So I always like to do these in reverse. So my rose for this last week is that my acid reflux has been consistent lately. I've kind of struggled with it on and off in the past, but I kind of had it at like a good place. And now it's just kind of been out of whack the last like week or so. And I have no idea why. And it's driving me crazy. And then my bud is that my bestie trip to Disney is next week. We live on Wednesday, and I am very excited. Also, just a little anxious because, again, this actually relates back to our trust thing that we talked about. Like in situations where there are other people who I care about, I sometimes worry that I will not speak up when I need something, right? So if we're out and about and she's like still having a great time and I'm like, I need a break, my body is a little nervous that I won't say like, hey, I gotta head back. You have fun. Let's meet up later. Even though I know she would want the best for me, she would want me to advocate, and she's totally fine being by herself. I hesitate to like speak up. And so I have that nervousness that I won't do that, but I'm gonna do it. Gonna do it. And then my rose is that I had a really good week at work last week and in my therapy session. Work has been like a thorn for a little bit because the balance has been off, but last week was really good. It was very balanced. And so it's kind of nice to see that thorn move into that rose space. So I'll put on some music for you to think about your rosebud and thorn. Share in the chat if you're comfortable. Okay. Hopefully you thought of your rosebud thorn. If not, it may come to you as we move through our weekly setup, which we are going to get started on. And this week's is on page 32 and 33 in your May journal. Now, as I mentioned, on Wednesday, I'm getting on a plane and I am headed to Disney World. So my setup this week looks really different than normal because I only have work for 2 days. So in my examples where I show you how I've done my journal, I will also include my examples for last week so you can kind of see what a normal setup looks like for me versus what I'm doing this week. But we will start on page 32 with this week I want to feel. So I've mentioned this before, but my word for the year is embrace. And so I have been changing this to this week I want to embrace rather than this week I want to feel. So last week I wanted to embrace flexibility, and that clearly worked out with like my work-life balance and stuff. This week I am embracing making memories. So there's a word cloud here on the screen for inspiration, and then we have all these amazing examples from all of you in Sonder Club. So I'll throw on a quick song and I'll hop between these two slides and share with us what your feeling is if you know what it is. Okay, so we are now going to move further down into the page to the weekly to-dos and major three goals. I like to kind of merge these sections together because a lot of people have started kind of merging them together in their journals as well. So I like to give you all that flexibility if you need it. I have not started merging the two for myself just yet, but I may in the future because I really enjoy seeing the way that people are doing that in Sonder Club. So last week, my major three goals were hydrate, nourish, and rest. I did pretty well with that, and it worked out pretty nicely. And then you can kind of see over here on the far right, I usually use the calendar for all my appointments and things, and then I have a running to-do list there at the bottom. But for this week, my major three goals are to take breaks, speak up, and have fun. And then I just have a couple things before I go out of town, and so then my other my other major to-do is just to have a great time. So here are some examples of how people did kind of combine these sections together. I really like this middle one on the left where they kind of made like a mini three bingo for each one of their categories. But I think that's a really nice way to kind of connect the two sections. And I think the more often you can do that in your journal, the more like cohesive it all kind of feels and the easier it feels to kind of like tackle the different things. But here are some more examples for our weekly to-dos. So if you have a super busy week ahead, you're not going on like vacation like I am, you may want to use the Eisenhower matrix over here in the top right. This is a different graphic than I've had before. It's a little bit easier to read, but that may help you like shrink that to-do list a little bit, at least for this week, right? Like you've got 7 days. It's just one week. So just be realistic and gentle with yourself about what you can actually do and accomplish. And then if you're like me, and whether you have a lot to do or a little to do, sometimes you have days where you just really struggle to get things done or get started, you could try the Pomodoro technique where you set a timer for your task for 25 minutes, agree to do it for 25 minutes, right? Get up, get going. And then at the end, you kind of like check your progress. And then you set another timer if you feel like you can continue working on it. A lot of times just getting started is the hardest part. So that can be really helpful. You can use this as a traditional space for to-do lists or divide those to-dos into different categories. You can also do a need, want, hope to-do list or kind of flip the script and try doing a to-be list. I've done that before, and I really enjoy that kind of like, it's almost like a little like mantra reminder for yourself. And then, of course, instead of to do, you can do to da. So instead of all the things you have to do this week, write down things as you get them done. Kind of gives you that sense of accomplishment. It feels a little bit different. But I always like what Katie, our other facilitator, says, which is it doesn't matter if it's to do or to da as long as it gets to done. And then we have some more examples of to-dos here. So you know we love bingo here at Silk and Sonder. So if you do have like a vacation coming up or a birthday or something fun, maybe you could do like a bingo centered around that. Or you can just, do a cleaning bingo, like tackle the task, right? You can kind of do that 3 grid across with those major 3 if that's going to help you get your things done. And speaking of major 3, here are some more examples there. So you can divide this into different categories. Sometimes that does kind of make us focus on what we're kind of looking at this week and where we really need to kind of zero in on if we can like divide it into the categories. I always like to point out this example in sort of like the top middle where they wrote down the why behind their major goal, because sometimes that really helps us stick to that goal. And then you can always try to do something different to like to don't list, right? The 3 things you don't want to do this week. I don't want to think negative thoughts. I don't want to bite my nails, right? That sort of thing. And as always, you can repurpose both of these sections, one of them, none of them, do whatever works for you. So there are some ways that you can repurpose there on the bottom right, along with some more examples. So I will flip through all of these slides for you while I put on some music so that you have them for reference and inspiration, and then we'll move on to our next section. right. Hopefully you have an idea of how you want to use these sections here. Again, if not, something may come to you. And also, in addition to repurposing, if there's ever a section that you're like, I'm just not feeling it this week, skip it. Put a sticker there, put a smiley face, put an affirmation, just leave it. Your journal should never feel like a chore. It should always feel like it's there to help you be your best you. So we're now going to move down to the habits and activities section. So I skipped this section last week because I'm just focusing on my monthly habits. That's really where I want my focus to be right now until I kind of get those narrowed down. But this week, since I'm not doing habits, I thought it would be fun to do like a little trip bingo. And it just so happened to like work out to where it kind of makes a grid since I leave on Wednesday. So I've got like took a picture together, took a break, checked in with myself, laughed, and made a memory. So I'm kind of excited to like try that out. I've never done that in the habits and activities section before. But here are some more ideas for inspiration. So you can fill in every line that's given to you there, or just a few, or if you're like building a routine into this and you need to like make extra lines, again, whatever this needs to be for you and what you need your journal to do it. You can also set goals for these kind of intentions or activities, or you can just track them as they go. This is also a great place if you want to kind of like, again, flip the script and instead of talk about things you want to do, maybe track things that you are not doing. So there's this little list over here of make a to not do list and some ideas there of things you might want to make sure you're not doing this week. But also a little grid here for some inspiration if you want to track some things that maybe want to or one or two other little things there. And then monthly habit versus weekly. So we talk about this in the monthly setup about you want your monthly habit to kind of be something that you want to do every day or track every day at least. But in this section, you can kind of give yourself a little bit more flexibility. It could be something you want to just do a couple times a week. If your monthly habits are going really well and you want to use this as a place to like try out new habits before you commit them to the monthly, you can do that. Or let's say you have like a monthly habit that you want to walk 3,000 steps a day, and that's going awesome. And so this week you want to try 3 times a week doing 5,000 steps a day, kind of see how that feels, right? So you can use it as a place where you can kind of stretch as well. So I'll put on some music for you to think about how you want to use this section. I love this yay activity, and I also like thinking about these from the perspective of activities versus habits. I don't know why, but I'm really into it. So I'll put on a song for you to think about this section, and then we'll move on to the next one. There we go. All right. So I wanted to call out real quick that Jill said, I've learned the goal thing is just not working for me. I love tracking and I put a sticker on over the goal part. And I think that that's awesome because sometimes part of trying things in your journal is not just figuring out what works, but what doesn't work too. So we are flipping on over to the next page, page 33, starting with the section titled Meal Plan. This section gets repurposed a lot, not because having a meal plan is a bad thing. So if you want to use it as a meal plan, you do that. Or a meal tracker works pretty well for that too, right? It just gets repurposed a lot because it takes up a lot of real estate in the journal. So it's kind of a great place to do a lot of things. And so we have a lot of different ideas. I usually use it for my work meetings. It's really helped to keep me organized. But this week I just have 2 days of meetings. And so I just wrote enjoy every moment together for my trip. But here are some examples. There's a whole list of ways you can repurpose there on the left-hand side. There is an example here where somebody did do it as a meal plan. I know a lot of folks like to write their affirmations here, and I really like this example where somebody's creating mindful moments and kind of asking themselves questions related to that. We also have a lot of folks who are using this as a journaling space, so kind of checking in either every day or through the week. So this one in the center saying, this week I learned, created, loved, remembered, accomplished. And then over on the right, we've got a top three, and there's like a different one each day. What my emotions are doing, what I want to talk about this week, what I'm singing this week, etc. And they've got some kind of cool things in there because Mother's Day is this weekend as well. So that might be something to think about. I like this word of the day too. It's almost like picking a feeling of the day or just like setting an intention for the day. I've done a single word before as my intentions for the month, and it's kind of giving me that same feeling, and I'm really into it. I also like this victory inventory where they kind of have like built in a place where they can check and say like, hey, these are the things that have gone well this week, and they can kind of like instantly remind themselves of those wins. And then also Kimberly L, who's here, shared in a previous social that they've been using the meal plan section for like a daily check-in for their feeling of the week. So if you wanted to feel strong, your check-in might be, how did I show strength today? And I think that that's a really great way to repurpose this area as well. So I'll put on another song for you, and then we'll move into our next section. All right. Thank you all for thinking about how you want to use this section. We are now moving on down to our mind body health plan. So I usually do like a little self-care bingo in this section, and I did that last week and it worked out great, like it always does for me. But I want to be a little, well, not want to be, but I plan to be a little less like into my journal this week just because I will be on vacation and I'll be with another person and everything. So this week I just decided to kind of write a little reminder to myself. I thought the quote at the top of the page was like perfect for me this week. Says the best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. So I wrote, remember this quote, saying no isn't a bad thing. You thrive when you listen to your body and honor what it needs. Trust your bestie and respect your trust with yourself. So that's kind of what I have put there for myself this week. But there are all kinds of ways that you can use this little but mighty space to work for you. I know a lot of folks repurpose the shopping list section too, which is right underneath this, and sometimes they'll kind of pair it up with this too. So like they might set an intention in the mind body health plan and then make like a self-care bingo in the shopping list section. So I'll show you the shopping list next, obviously, but these are some more inspirations from Sonder Club of how you might use this mind body health plan. You can try the I feel I need T chart. You can use this to be some sort of different kind of care for plants, care for pets, care for kiddos, other people in your life, and of course, as always, for yourself. So I will throw on some music again for you to think about how you want to use this section, and then we'll move into our shopping list and then close out our time together. All right, we are going to move down into that shopping list section. Now, I do actually use this as a shopping list. I know there's a lot of apps and things people use for this, but for me, having this space in my journal that I can just jot something down quick in is really helpful for me. I have a tendency to impulse buy things because I'm afraid if I don't buy them right away, I'll forget. And then if I don't write them down somewhere or I don't impulse buy them, I actually do forget. So it really helps me to have this space kind of dedicated to that. But I don't plan on making a list of souvenirs to buy on vacation. I hope that I don't bring home too much stuff stuffed into my suitcase. So instead, I kind of made a little must-do list for our trip. My friend has some things that like she's never done before, and so they're the things that I want to make sure that we do while we're there. So I just made it like a fun little must-do in Disney list for us this week. And then here are some examples. So again, like I said, this gets repurposed a lot just because not everybody needs a space for their shopping list. I always love the washi scraps. I think it's like a fun little abstract art piece every week if you use the washi tape. And then somebody had all these super cute Cinco de Mayo stickers when they did their weekly last week. So that was super fun. And then you've got the self-care bingos and the positive self-talk, which can definitely combine up to that mind body health plan. So I will throw on another song for you to think about how you want to use this section, and then we'll close out our time together. It's always so fast. So we have one last little section here, which is just the I'm loving section. And as always, if you usually wait till the end of the week to fill this out, by all means do so. But I always like it when you guys share in the chat something that you are currently loving, because it's kind of like the rosebud thorn in a way. Sometimes we're loving the same things, or, I don't know, it's spring, right? It's spring, it's getting warmer outside. There are kind of collective things happening. So it's kind of nice to see how those overlap. For me, I am currently still loving planning for my trip, which is just right around the corner now. But we appreciate all of you coming here today, making this time for yourself, putting yourself in a good spot for the week ahead. I think it's so important to kind of set aside this time because otherwise it always kind of feels like I'm running, if that makes sense. Doing the weekly setup kind of allows me to walk into my week ahead rather than running into it. So we are so happy that you are here. If you have got your journal set up and you would like to share it in Sonder Club, we would love to see it. You never know. We might decide to pull some of your posts and stick them in there as examples in the future. Typically, if you can get us a clear picture, that's the best thing that works for us. We do still have the monthly sticker subscription going on. I saw like a couple examples in Sonder Club where people had used this and it looked really pretty with like the coordinated colors and everything. And then the overall sticker set is also here, which is over 2,000 pieces of stickers. That's how I did my setup last week, and that's how I plan to do my setup next, like the next week too, because it was just really clean and it felt really good. And I'm not usually a sticker person, but I don't know, I might be becoming one. And then they have just launched the Elevate Planner. It looks really cool. It looks like it's got a lot of like really neat, like deep journal prompts. And at least for me, that's one of the things that I've always loved about the journals. So this is like very attractive to me. So I'm definitely going to order one. And I'm going to try to use that 10% off code while we still have it. As always, we're still doing the Refer a Friend program. So if you refer someone to Silk and Sonder, they get $10 off, you get $10 off, and then you can come to socials together. Kind of a fun little bonding experience. If you're able to upgrade to an annual subscription, you do have to pay the full amount up front, but it can save you quite a bit of monies in the long run. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's never too early to start making this holiday wish list. Like, let people know, hey, this is something I'm definitely going to use all year long. That's what I want. And then if you would please fill out the social survey, let us know what you liked about this social, if there was anything that we could do better. All of that feedback does get reviewed, and socials have absolutely become what they are now because of your feedback. And finally, Malika's going to share the YouTube link in the chat. This has all of our Sonder socials that have been recorded. They're usually up within like 3 or 4 days of the event. But sometimes it might take a little bit longer just depending on what they have to do, but I think there's over 700 socials on there now. So especially if you've joined just within the last year or so, it might be cool to go back and listen to some of the old like journal prompt themes and stuff like that, especially if you think it might be a theme that like resonates with you. And finally, I will share a link to my playlist in the chat. At the beginning of the social, I mentioned a podcast by Brene Brown where she talks about those 7 elements of trust. That podcast episode is inside of this playlist. So if you do want to go and listen to that, you can find it in that playlist. But it was our sincere pleasure spending our time with you here this evening. We hope you have a fantastic week ahead. And until next time, be good to each other, and we'll see you all in Sonder Club.
My mother says I have Irish eyes, Irish eyes, Irish eyes. My mother says I have Irish eyes. They go ever so blue under stormy skies, but they're never so blue as when I let them cry. My father says I have English hair, English hair, English hair. Brown like the bark of an oak somewhere, like the bed of a lake where the hemlock grows, like the thorn in the stem of an English rose. I'm a map of the world and the ones before, 1 foot in sea and 1 on shore. Every step, every hope along high. I'm a map of them all with my Irish eyes. My nana says I have traveling feet, traveling feet, traveling feet. Slippers for princesses don't fit me, but I dance to my own drum bright and bold, and my traveling feet always get me home. My sister says I have a restless soul, restless soul, restless soul. Easy to catch, but I'm hard to hold, like a song Irish eyes.